The life of any TV star has its highs and lows. However, what sets a normal celebrity apart from those who are into the reality genre is that in the latter's case, we usually get to know about their life's events firsthand through the shows they're in. Being one of the main stars of Bering Sea Gold means that showing important parts of her life on TV is just part of the job for Emily Riedel. While that isn't exactly bad per se, and has actually positively affected her business, it could also make her vulnerable to the general public's negative opinions. Anyway, the attention Emily attracts from fans of the series, and even those who aren't into it, is undoubtedly impressive. That's why we're presenting everything Emily Riedel is up to nowadays, including a professional career, appearances in Bering Sea Gold, and her personal life. So keep with us to know more. Fortunately for Emily Riedel's fans, she's still a main star in Bering Sea Gold. During the show's 13th season, aired in 2021, Emily and the Eroicus crew faced several difficulties in the way to make the best out of the gold dredging season. As she affirmed to the website TV Shows Ace, the COVID-19 contingency was the most defining factor in their relative success, as it disrupted the entire supply chain, in addition to increasing regulations for operations in Alaska, even preventing the Eroica from plying on as freely as in previous years. Another factor messing with Emily's dredging goals during the year's earliest months was definitely the rise of the market competition resulting from the gold's prices, which was as high as $2,000 an ounce. Though later these numbers lowered a little, it made her team's basic requirements, such as bidding and leasing grounds for a good price, harder than ever. As well, Emily's staff went through some changes, with the return of her father, Steve Riedel, and her longtime co-worker and team's creative mind, Zeke, both of whom had left the show in previous seasons. All in all, it was a good Bering Sea Gold season for Emily, but just in case you want to keep up to date with her, she's a very active Instagram user and also regularly updates her mining-centered YouTube channel. For being a reality star whose show is centered in such a rustic activity as mining, it's surprising to see so many people interested in Emily Riedel's romantic life. Admittedly, the start of her career on TV was partially marked by her romantic involvement with Zeke, but following the end of that relationship, Emily opted to keep any developments about her personal life low-key, but which in the end only served to fuel speculations even more. It was only in early 2021 that Emily finally broke her vow of secrecy and showed her unnamed boyfriend to the rest of the world through a Valentine's Day Instagram post. Judging by the small amount of information she revealed to her followers, she met her man in early 2020 thanks to her brother Paul's help as a matchmaker. The two lovebirds' relationship progressed quite quickly, and by January 2021, they were already engaged. Fast forward to July, and Emily and her unnamed boyfriend tied the knot in a private ceremony, which unfortunately wasn't featured in Bering Sea Gold. Although knowing more about her now husband would be great, Emily's choice to keep his identity a secret is understandable. Now we can only wish her a blissful married life. It's basically a tradition for reality TV personalities to invest in someone else's business or start their own. Although the fame provided by the show sometimes boosts their entrepreneurial activities, some actually work hard to grow their businesses without those influences. The latter describes Emily Riedel and her Bering Sea Paydirt, a gold panning online business she started promoting on her social media late in 2021. So far, the only panning package listed on the website is the Eroica Paydirt, which weighs 1.5 pounds and is worth $150. In case you're wondering why someone would be interested in buying these packages, you might be up for a surprise. Judging by the shop's customer reviews, panning for gold is a recreational activity meant for everyone, even despite its seeming complexity. It's also an activity worth it for those mining enthusiasts who want to experience finding their own gold, however small in amount, but aren't able to just go mining for it. As stated on the website, Bering Sea Paydirt's products are guaranteed to come directly out of the Eroica's dredging findings. Knowing her rise to fame was through her involvement in the gold dredging business, it's undoubtedly interesting that Emily Riedel's origins were in a vastly different field. Born in 1988 in Alaska, Emily's musical talents were evident from her early years. So following her parents' divorce and her mother's eventual move to North Carolina, Emily was prompted to pursue a career as a professional singer, first enrolling into the University of North Carolina's School of Arts, not having any previous musical education until then, except for that provided by a summer course she took. Emily impressively passed the university's audition, but her path in the School of Music didn't go smoothly at the start. As admitted by Emily, the fact that her early education had been sporadic at best made her adaptation to such an organized institution difficult. Nonetheless, with resilience and self-imposed discipline, Emily crossed that bridge thanks to practice and study. According to Emily, besides the university's role of shaping her love for music, it also taught her discipline and her sense of responsibility, positive characteristics which she admits to now applying to every job, including mining. Having graduated from the University of North Carolina with many dreams in mind, Emily Riedel's primary goal was to further her music studies in Europe. However, her initial plans of enrolling in an opera conservatory in Germany while studying languages were put on hold due to financial limitations. Convinced to find a well-paid job, able to provide her with enough money to follow that dream, Emily accepted her childhood friend Zeke proposal of dredging for gold in Nome for the summer of 2011. Having no previous experience as a deckhand, Emily planned on staying in Nome just long enough to save the necessary money for a trip. Little did she imagine back then that by the end of the season, she'd be signing a contract with Discovery to appear in Bering Sea Gold. Though her goal of becoming an opera singer was permanently pushed aside to pursue her new interests, the fact that she hasn't left Nome, her boat and team in almost a decade, tells us she's more than convinced that the Bering Sea is her place in the world. Her beginnings in Bering Sea Gold were from the bottom. For the first couple of years, Emily worked as a deckhand, first on Zeke boats, the Clark and the Edge. Regardless of her humble beginnings, she soon gained fans' attention and increased her screen time tenfold as a result. After then spending an entire season on her father's boat, Steve's World on Ice, Emily bought her dredge, the Eroica. The most important part wasn't only setting her own gold dredging operation to increase her earnings considerably, but also the fact that she was the first woman in the show and on the entire Bering Sea to become a captain. Since taking the Eroica's reins in 2014, Emily has panned $100,000 of gold on average per season, an impressive amount which demonstrates her talent as a captain, but also makes us wonder what happened to her music aspirations then. According to Emily, while she hasn't stopped singing and sometimes even performs at events throughout the country, there is a sadness in her heart when the thought of not pursuing her opera singing dream crosses her mind. Nonetheless, nostalgia isn't enough to make her leave her job in the dredging operation, and she finds it rewarding despite the difficulties. Although her performance as the Eroica's captain isn't inherently related to her gender, it's not surprising that Emily is often questioned on her experience as a woman in a male-dominated job field. Her opinions on the topic are mixed. On one side, pursuing a career in gold dredging hasn't been easy for her, an understandable statement considering how low the participation of female workers in the field is. As well, Emily considers that there is a lot of emphasis put on her gender, evident in the show's promotions. However, that isn't necessarily a bad thing in her book, as she considers that it possibly encourages other women to enter this industry. The success Emily has achieved so far is impressive, as also is her resilience and stubbornness to not abandon the industry, regardless of the negativity which comes her way from time to time. Anyway, Emily couldn't be prouder that despite the many prejudices and biases, her accomplishments as a miner and captain are considerable. When talking about Emily Riedel, it's understandable that the name Zeke is brought up quite often. For starters, Emily and Zeke had known each other for decades prior to the show. It was he who offered Emily her first job in the mining field on board the Clark back in 2011. But their relationship was rusty to say the least, especially in front of the camera. Though they eventually became a couple, the pair's heated disagreements were recurrent early in the series, leading to the relationship's end by the first season's finale. As expected, both miners' tempered personalities got in the way of their job after the breakup. A post by Zeke at the time described Emily as an angry, vindictive tyrant, while Emily professed in an interview that Zeke's gold fever often overpowered him. Regardless of their many rifts, the pair continued working together for business reasons, and eventually patched things up in 2017. But the many hurtful words they threw each other's way weren't easily erased from the viewers' minds. By knowing she's the captain of her own dredging boat, people instantly assume that Emily Riedel is a millionaire thanks to the gold mining business, even if that isn't true in the least. Although since its debut in the series, the Eroica has certainly had its good times collecting gold from the depths of the Bering Sea, several factors, such as operating, leasing, and housing costs, could considerably reduce the team's earnings. After these calculations, the crew devised the money as agreed, but that's hardly a basis for Emily to become a millionaire. Unfortunately, the salaries of Bering Sea Gold stars are unknown, as are her earnings from the business Bering Sea Pay Dirt. Regardless, we estimate Emily Riedel's net worth at close to $1 million as of late 2021. Every reality TV show is naturally exposed to critiques, but while many are judged for its ingenuity or for having too much drama, more serious issues are the source of negativity directed towards Bering Sea Gold. According to Arctic Today, the show's popularity hasn't necessarily been beneficial for Nome, the gold market, and especially not for the environment. As stated, prior to the show's first season, there were only 5 dredging leases active in the area in which the show filmed. That's increased exponentially over the years, so nowadays there are 86 existing leases. Besides the obvious cannibalization of the market, and the difficulties for individual miners to make a living out of it now, it's a concern how oil spills, underwater noise, and other environmental issues related to dredging could be severely affecting that area's ecosystem. While it would be too much to directly fault the show for what other people do, it's undeniable that underwater mining was an almost unknown activity prior to the series' popularization. Will these issues result in the end of Bering Sea Gold? Doesn't seem likely, but it's concerning how deeply the media can affect people and places. Thank you for spending some time with us. Make sure to like and subscribe so you never miss another video. We also handpick these videos which we recommend you watch next. You can talk to us on all social medias or ask a question in the comments below. Thank you for being with us, and we'll see you back tomorrow.